Welcome to the Soldier Fund podcast, the platform for untold stories from the National Guard Special Forces community. Join us as we delve into the lives of these elite warriors and the journey of our nonprofit, dedicated to supporting their courageous mission to free the oppressed worldwide. I'm your host, Ben Derrick. Let's dive in. Well, before we get rolling, CSM Dawson, I'm so grateful to have you on the podcast today. I'm eager to get this mixture of story and a career that has spanned as long as yours has, and I can only imagine where this episode is going to go. I want to say thanks for you making the time and putting all the work in to be able to join us today. I know our audience is going to be eager to hear what is going to happen next. So usually what we do when we're introducing our guests is talk about times down range and rank, and honestly, all because of the span of your career, all that stuff kind of gets lost. But you're known as CSM around many of the circles, which I know may frustrate you a little bit, but I think it is a testament to your role as a leader, and we're going to get into a lot of that today. So I would love to, if we could just start at beginning of career and what attracted you to this SF community in the first place, and then we'll see where this goes.
Well, first of all, Ben, I'd like to express my appreciation for you having me on this podcast and giving me this opportunity to have a conversation about the thing that one of the greatest things I've loved in my life. My respect for the battalion and my respect for the men in the battalion and other special forces organizations in the regiment has been a very important thing to me. And even as I got older, it became more important to me. So I do appreciate it. And so without further ado, I will say I really appreciate the fact that I get to step on in the tall shoes of the last interviewee you had, Frank Rossi, which I don't know that I can measure up to that, but because Frank's a special man, and
he is.
Anyway, so I joined Special Forces in early 1980. I was what was called a Rep 63. Okay. That's the same as an X-ray, if you will. And I came from a home. We didn't have running water. We didn't have telephones, and so running water and indoor bathrooms was the first time I'd seen it was in basic training. And the interesting thing also about that, the first airplane I ever rode in, I jumped out of, which is a helpful task. I mean, let's knock out 2 cases of beer at one time, right? So I joined the Army as an 05 Bravo. That was before the designation of the Special Forces tab. So what you did pipeline-wise at that time was you went through basic training, AIT, jump school, and then they put you on a bus and they sent you to Fort Bragg. The 82nd guys would get out at the 18th replacement depot, and then they would take what a few of us were going on over to Special Forces training to what was called Smoke Bomb Hill. And I remember the bus driver saying, "Gentlemen, this is where you begin." I thought, oh man, I'm in the wrong damn place for sure. But hey, what are you going to do? It's too late. You can't run. You signed a contract. So we did our pre-phase there for about 6 weeks, and I went to an experimental Q course at the time. They had been losing a lot of guys, and the Department of the Army wanted to do a survey to see why they were losing so many guys in Phase 1. There was no selection then. You had a 6-week Phase 1, which entailed land nav, patrolling, survival, and methods of instruction. And mainly it was just a beatdown. It was a 6-week beatdown. I mean, I'm a radio operator, first of all. I know nothing about patrolling. I'm getting 2 hours sleep a night. How much am I going to learn about it in the classroom? It's it was just ridiculous. It's like, well, we're just going to beat you guys up. We relied on all the guys in the class that were like ex-82nd or ex-Rangers or stuff like that to really pull us through. And they did. They really did. We had there was some good mentorship. But I will tell you this, the oldest man in my class was 29 years old. And at that time in my life, I thought, man, that guy's old. I don't think he can cut this. And I mean, I really believed that. I thought, man, you got to be 19 years old to do this stuff. But alas, made it through phase 1, went into the basic radio operator course, spent, I think, 12 weeks there, went to phase 2, went out to Pisgah National Forest in February of 1981, and was a five-man team. We carried 3 sleeping bags because we wanted to cut our weight down, because you're going to be up all night making commo, and it was brutal. At that time, if you didn't make communications with Fort Bragg, they didn't give you food. Now, I don't know if that was quite legal, but it worked for them.
It happens. Yeah.
It happens. It was it instilled a lot of desire to be successful. And we got through that. And Special Forces was a funny thing that has changed a lot, because at that time, I remember having a class in phase 1. They landed a C-130 in a helicopter, and they said, this is the cool stuff you can steal off a C-130 in a helicopter if you can get it in your bag. There was a lot less honorableness. We were out in western North Carolina when we finished that 8 weeks, and they had made us pack a clean set of clothes in a waterproof bag. They took us down to the creek and said, get cleaned up. Got us cleaned up, took us into this little ville, bought us all dinner, put us in the back because it was a dry county so we could have beer. And these guys did all that for their students. Of course, there was only 18 of us, but they took care. They really took care of their kids. Now, they were hard on them, but they took care of them, and they made fun of them constantly. It was just, harassment was going to happen all the time. So then we went to phase 3, which was the final phase of SF course, which was 6 weeks long, and went out, did the whole Robin Sage thing. It was good training. Jumped in with my first ruck that weighed like 110 pounds and survived it. Come out, and we went back to Bragg, and we graduated. So that pipeline lasted, I'm thinking about, I'd been in the Army a year and 2 months when I graduated the Q course, right? So you can figure about 8 months of it was Q course. A lot shorter. No language school, no selection, no SEER, right? And that's one of the big things I point out to guys nowadays. The core competency level of your average Special Forces graduate is so much bigger than when I went through. I mean, these guys are much better trained. I mean, they're way more competent. They're semi-fluent in their languages. Their regional orientation is much better. I think their problem-solving skills have been drilled into them, as well as some necessary leadership skills too, which is helpful when you're like an X-ray or a Rep 63 like I was, because I didn't have any leadership skills. I had nothing. So basically, when I was going to go to a team one day, what was I bringing to the team? I'm a pretty damn good radio operator. Other than that, I can do land nav.
And you know how to suffer.
No, I do know how to take a good ass kicking. I can remember in phase 1, we were out by the street one day. This is before, have you been to Camp McCall?
I haven't.
Been? Well, when I was there, it was nothing. We lived in tar paper shacks, and there was no windows, and the door was a piece of plywood, and you just raised up the louvers on the side for air to come through, concrete floor, and you had a plywood plank for a bunk. And that's how you lived. You ate sea rations 3 times a day. And that was it. That's how you lived. They woke you up every morning with this old rattly, bullhorn thing that played music over it. And it was usually the Ballad of the 18th Airborne Corps. And that was usually, they would start that whenever they felt like it. Because sometimes they might come in drunk about 3:30 in the morning and decide, well, it's time to do PT. So PT would begin. I remember I had a good friend once. They was always checking for watches, and they had this little game they play. They say, "Anybody know what time it is?" And this guy yelled out, "It's daytime, Sergeant." Well, they smoked his ass thoroughly. Had a guy get caught chewing gum once, chewing gum during flag detail. He ended up terminating his volunteering withdrawing for chewing gum. It was madness. They would do stuff like this. So once a week, maybe twice, they'd bring a hot meal out in Mermite cans, take us into the big classroom area, and everybody would eat a hot meal. But if somebody had been screwing up a lot, they had what they called the guest of honor. And the guest of honor would get a double pile of rice and beans on his plate, and he would eat up with the instructors. And he'd eat all of it. And then, if he felt, after so long, they would let him select a buddy to come up and help him eat. Just harassment.
Mm-hmm. But
Crazy
it created
stuff.
A certain sort of camaraderie, I think. I mean, as I hear the newer guys talk about this, there's a lot of honor given that way for the original guys that were doing these things.
I would agree with that. And it really what it was this whole process was a process whereby, they were trying to pick out and build the guys that had the capabilities to become Green Berets.
Correct.
They weren't gonna build them in their 8th month POI, but they were going to make you extremely proficient at your job. Our medics at that time, they would go their phase 2 alone was over a year and 2 months. It was tremendous. Wow. And the attrition rate was out of this world. I mean, I would say they would have less than a 10% attrition rate. I mean, they would lose 95% of the guys, which seemed like a lot, after they go through phase 1, do all that stuff. But they would usually, if a guy was pretty savvy, they'd let him reclass into 11 Bravo or something like that. And I've known a lot of guys that did that.
So this begs the question, not to interrupt you, because the story is moving very well so far. It makes me ask the question, what was it that drove you to get through this? What was your motivation for success?
Can I be fair about this and tell the truth? Is this going to be a true... I was scared of hell of going to the 82nd. I'd gone out and jumped with those dudes on a Saturday once, and they were scary people. You ever hear of daisy chaining?
Yes.
You know what a daisy chain is? Where you hook your chute to the back of another guy's chute to the back of another guy. They do that. They would try to get the helicopter rocking back and forth. Just crazy shit. I'm like, oh my God. I don't think I could survive that. So that was a lot of it right there. That, and I've always kind of had an inner motivation to do something better. When you're a kid, you dream of all kinds of things. I can tell you, once you complete the Q course, you quit dreaming because you've made it there. There's nothing to dream about. But and so I give this example. I went home for Christmas after being in 11 months, and my mom said all I did was run and sleep. And that's probably all I did. Go for runs and sleep. Of course, from rural Missouri, In 1980, when people saw you running down the road, they thought you were getting shot at, or you were running away, or you were trying to avoid a dangerous animal. So it was almost impossible to go for a run. It's like, what are you doing? I'm out running. Why are you doing that?
It was a different time.
It is. But, I remember even after the War on Terror, I'd come home and run a lot, and I'd wear spandex running pants. And my brother asked one of my neighbors over here, Tad, he says, what do you make of that Jeff running out there in those spandex running pants and stuff? Tad goes, I don't know, but if he can run that goddamn fast, I think I'll leave him alone.
Well, getting through training, get through the course, and the part I'm most eager to hear is your being a Green Beret, just that experience for you, what it was like.
Well, it was a real kick in the balls, I'll tell you the truth. So what happens when you're... One more story before I get over this.
Please.
Now, this is the truth. So we were sitting in a barracks one afternoon, and a good buddy of mine, we're talking, and we're talking about after the Q course is over, and I'm going to Devon's. I said, so what are you doing? He says, well, I'm going home. I go, what do you mean you're going home? He said, I'm going back to Mississippi. I'm like, what? How are you doing that? He goes, well, I'm in the National Guard. I'm not in active duty. I go, are you shitting me? You mean they have a National Guard? I could have been going home at the end of this thing? He goes, yeah, there's a bunch of guys here. You didn't know that? I'm like, hell no. I thought everybody was on active duty. Mm-hmm. He goes, oh, no. I'm going home, man. What's wrong with you? Well, anyway, so I didn't go home. Me and a friend of mine and another guy in March of 1981, got in his Ford pickup. One guy rode in the back, slept in a Joe Bear bag, and we rode up to Fort Devens, Massachusetts, rolled in there, and got signed in. And then the big kick in the balls comes when you're an 18, or when you're 05 Bravo. They send you to Signal Company. Oh, I forgot one story.
Get it.
Before we left for Fort Devens, Massachusetts, there was a chick named Katie Wilder going through the Q course. This time, there was two Q courses. There was the officer Q course and the enlisted Q course. Everybody knew the officer Q course was bullshit, right? Well, anyway, Katie Wilder was a female captain, intel branch, and she was going through the Q course. Well, not SWIC, but JFK IMA said, we need aggressors. And we want aggressors that are going to chase hard. So they came and got about 20 of us that were all going to Devens. All of us were going to, no, in 20, he's like 10, going to Devens. Our job, they gave us one active duty guy that knew what he was doing because we didn't. And our job was to chase that team through the woods for 4 days. And that's what we did.
Wow.
I mean, it was awesome. It was awesome. I mean, we throwing fire. They never slept. We'd attack them like 2 or 3 times a day, and I got to tell you, that was ridiculous. But anyway, that's my Katie Wilder story.
Okay.
I did go to the graduation. There. That when they were supposed to graduate, she didn't walk across the stage. They sent her back. They sent her back to Fort Huachuca. But I saw when a helicopter landed one time, her rucksack go skidding down the runway. I was like, well, that's not very heavy, is it? Anyhow, so we get up to Fort Devens, get signed in to Signal Company, because you got to do 2 major operations before you can go to an ODA.
Okay.
Which sucked, but luckily there was 2 operations coming up, and I jumped on the first one going to Flintlock as a radio operator, working 12 on, 12 off. And it was actually a really good experience because at that time, our communication style was very different from anything you use today. We used a lot of what was called blind transmission broadcasting, which meant they would send you a 120 group message sent twice at 15 groups a minute on the hour, on the half hour, whatever your contact time was. You would copy your message, and in that message, there'd be a 7-group call-up. The first 7 groups sent would be sent 3 times. And in those seven groups was your the group that showed you where in the crypto pads to find the break for the frequency, and it would have your frequency in it. Five number groups. So anyway, you would take that, and that would be your received message. You have to break it later, and then you'd have 10 minutes to build your antenna, get it on that frequency, tune up, and send your burst. And we were only allowed to burst with a Gray 71. I mean, we didn't send manual code. This was all like that Gray 71's vintage 1950s, early 50s. It's all mechanical, 8-track tape, magnetically recorded, and you get pretty good at it. And you're using a 10-watt radio, and you're generally talking around 1,000 miles, which is hard to do, but those guys in that signal company, they were used to using those breakback rigs, because that Gray 71 mechanically would send it about 300 words per minute. But because it's mechanical, it's on a spring, it might vary between 280 and 300, and weather conditions and everything. So it's pretty darn tricky.
Right.
But we did it. And as I progressed, I got pretty good at it. But what happened was before I did my second operation, a levy came down. I don't know what a levy is, but a levy, they needed 7 radio operators in Panama. Now, at that time, Panama was supporting El Salvador.
Right.
And they would take 7 radio operators. They would send us to DLI en route, teach us Spanish, and send us straight to Panama to plus up their teams. Well, hey, how good a deal is that, right? Go to El Salvador or go play in Europe. That's a no-brainer. I want to go to El Salvador because that's where shit's happening, right?
Right.
So I sign up. Well, I got to see the CSM. It's like, why do you want to go to El Salvador? I go, well, because you're doing shit down there. He goes, they have sand fleas down there. I said, is that like regular fleas? They get on a dog? He goes, no, they're sand fleas. They're in the sand. I said, oh, okay. Well, I'll keep that in mind. 2 weeks later, lo and behold, I get a phone call from the CSM I'm at the BOP, or the Base Operations Platoon. He goes, hey, I need to see you. Get up here. I got up there. He goes, hey, how about this? How about I send you to Charlie Company 3rd Battalion 10th Group? Put you on ODA. How about that? I go, that'd be good. Says, no more talk about the 7th Group shit, though, okay? I go, yeah, no more talk. I won't say shit about nobody. I won't say I held you hostage. But anyway, so they sent me up there. I met my first team sergeant. And you know what? The funny thing is, I listen to these guys on these podcasts talk about the day they showed up for their team room and how they were kind of like shunned. Not shunned, but, Anyway, it was like that. I got there. 20-year-old me. I know jack and shit. And guy goes, Joe Davies, my team sergeant. Joe says, get in here. I'll talk to you. I said, okay. He says, you better be a good goddamn radio operator. I go, oh, I think I am. He says, well, good. I'm going to send you down for a code test right now. You better be able to do a 15-15. Because that last son of a bitch we had couldn't. And I said, well, I think I can. I ain't really worried about it too much. So I did it, came back, passed, said, man, I'm glad you did, because we would lose our green light status. I said, what? Your green light status? He says, yeah, this is a weapons team, son. I go, a weapons team? He says, yeah, I'll tell you about it some other time. But it's a weapons team. I said, he said, a special weapons team. I'm like, we shoot like special machine guns? Mm-hmm. special hand grenades? He goes, no, it's special weapons. Hell, I didn't know what special weapons was. Make any damn... Does anybody know what? Whatever. He said, go up the S2, go see Sergeant Major Mickelson, get your TS processed. So I have to have TS clearance. So I go up there, we do all the paperwork, and Sergeant Major goes, we'll get this expedited, we'll get it out, we'll get it to you. You'll have this clearance within 60 days. Within 60 days. That's how fast they would do it, because it needed to be done bad. And they weren't... You had to have a particular number of men on a cell to be an effective green team, a green light team.
Okay.
And you had to have at least 6. And then, but the problem with that is if you didn't have all your guys qualified, then they weren't all qualified. They couldn't even look at it. They couldn't see it. They couldn't look at it. They couldn't touch it. So we processed my clearance, and within 2 weeks, I met with a DIA agent and did my polygraph. I sat there 4 hours with this dude. Now, mind you, I'm 20 years old. I had one speeding ticket my entire life. I lived at one address my entire life. And we're going to go over this. You know, I don't know if you've been to one of these things. I've been through a lot of them. The questions are like, so do you have any friends that lived with illegal aliens? No, I don't. I'm from Roscoe, Missouri, dude. There's no illegal aliens there. You know? And this goes on and on and on, and it ends in the questions with girls, like girls. What do you think about girls? What do you think? It's like that No Time for Sergeants movie, you know, when Andy asked Andy Griffith about just any old girls, you know, or like, he said, what about young girls? I'm like, well, the young girls are okay. I mean, it's fine with me. I mean, I don't care. No skin off my ass, right? He keeps going on and on. He'll come back to girls. I said, you know, you seem like you've got a problem with girls. I don't have a problem. Well, have you ever thought about overthrowing the government? I'm like, no, not really. Do I need to? I don't know. It went on. It was an experience for me. I mean, I was like, geez, can this place get any frickin' weirder? So I got my clearance, finally. In the meantime, we've been doing a lot of live fires. I mean, and these guys, you know, several of them Vietnam vets, these guys had buku time in the boons. They had fought, they had shot. And so when they want to do a live fire, what do we say in the Army? We walk, crawl, run, right? Not them. They just run, because they know what they're doing. I don't know what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. Give me a break here, dude. I remember the evaluator that was evaluating. It's the first one we did an Australian peel. It was pretty complex, and we did it. And Joe says, well, Dave, how'd we do? He says, well, Hayseed didn't shoot anybody, so I think we did okay. Oh, it was Hayseed.
Okay.
That's what my team sergeant always called me, Hayseed. He said, Hayseed, do this. Hayseed, do that, you know. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I know we went to SOT there at Mott Lake Compound to do close quarter battle, and I said, Joe, can I use the long gun and shoot over people's heads? He goes, never in a million years will you ever do that. And if you ever get near my daughters, I'll kill you. I said, okay. But, you know, just shit like that happening all the time. I mean, it was just amazing. And great time. So after I got my clearance, me and another guy who had come before me, older guy, we went and did went to training on the device, which was it was not bad. I mean, it was good training. I mean, wasn't very complicated. You know, you had a device that weighed about there was actually 2 different models. There was a smaller one and a larger one. The larger one's one we normally did. I think it was a B something. Anyway, it weighed about, I'm going to say 65 pounds. And that would be in the configuration for jumping. I mean, unless you decided to jump it in the barrel, because you come in this little bit smaller than like a 40-gallon barrel. And you could jump it in the barrel if you wanted to, but man, that barrel was big. I mean, it was clunky. They had an extra large Alice rucksack that they issued with this thing so that you could jump it in a rucksack to make it easier, right? Which was not too bad. It was easy, pretty easy. But what, of course, it did is it caused a greater stress on the ODA. For one thing, you had to carry a shape charge, a 30-pound shape charge, in case you had to destroy it. So at the end of the day, you're going to end up carrying an extra 100 pounds on every single mission. So if I'm the primary carrier, that's what I'm carrying. And that means all my 100 pounds radio gear got to go somewhere else. So it makes it harder for everybody. You got to have a real, strong team of guys in great shape to do this, and so that's what that was all about. And you also had to obey what was called the 2-man rule. You ever heard of the 2-man rule?
Not the one you're talking about.
Like they do those certain, like the TS clearance stuff, you know. In other words, if I was carrying it, I had to have a guy walking with me that could put his hand on my rucksack at all times.
Ah, yes. Okay.
And we're all carrying locked and loaded. We're all carrying guns, and they're always locked and loaded. Because we can't. You don't want to get compromised, and that was their big fear, was when we put these teams out of these planes or places, and if somebody could get wind that they had one, or even a practice one would be just as good because it gives you all the parameters. But they would definitely want to get a hold of it. So it was like that. It wasn't a joke, and you had to employ it a certain way. To be more specific, for example, once we were trained on it and we operated, we became part of what's called the PRP. Have you ever heard of that?
No, sir.
It's called the Personal Reliability Program, and it's mainly in the Air Force.
Okay.
The Air Force guys that go down in the control bunkers and turn the key for the nuclear launches are what's called the PRP. They've been evaluated as being personally reliable to pull the trigger if they're ordered to do it.
What's that got to do with you?
And so that I have to be a part of that program. I have to be able to pull that trigger, and I have to, my personal reliability has to be ensured.
Wow.
So in other words, when I went through that process, when I went through the whole DIA interviews and all that, they had to determine from that point on, is this guy capable of doing what he says, what we tell him to do?
Even before you even knew what being told what to do was going to be. Yeah.
I mean, you can't get the cart before the horse, but you can't put the horse before the cart sometimes. I mean, so it's kind of weird like that, but you had to be part of that. Now, being a part of that was not easy. Because number one, you were required to pee in a cup every single month, and have blood drawn, and all that shit, right? And you couldn't go out partying by yourself. You had to go with somebody that was also in the PRP program. Well, guess what? How many 20-year-olds are in the PRP program? Not very damn many. And in group, at that time, you only had one team or battalion that had this capability. So it wasn't really common. It was a pain in the ass is what it was. I remember a particular time, me and the team went down and we're having to pee in a cup and draw blood. And I've always had this. When I was younger, not anymore. I'm over it now. I used to have problems with blood being drawn out of me.
Okay.
And I may have been a little hungover, but anyway, I'm sitting in this school chair and they're drawing blood. Next thing you know, I'm on the floor doing the funky chicken. Team sergeant looks in and goes, "Oh my God, they killed Hayseed." I woke up just as he said that. I said, "I'm not dead." He said, "What'd you do? Did you fall out of the chair?" I said, "No, I passed out." "Why'd you pass out?" "Well, sometimes my blood does that to me." He goes, "Jesus Christ, you chicken shit." Man, it was like I couldn't get a break.
I'm telling you.
I was always fucking up. Always fucking up.
And you didn't exactly know where you had landed, what was going on until much later. The way you're telling the story, like I'm just on the edge of my seat. What is this thing?
Oh, yeah, it was just mind-boggling. So we did a mission once. It was right before Christmas. I thought, all the goddamn times. I'm getting ready to go on Christmas leave. It's December the 14th or 12th, I don't know. And they're calling us out. Well, you can't just say, "Well, I'm not going." No, you cannot do that. They will put you in jail for that shit. Because like the nuke people come down. It's not the Army. It's these guys in black hats, They're the ones reviewing the shit. From the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and all that. So we isolate. We fly to Vincenza, Italy. and we pick up a device. So the first thing you do is on a MC-130, you run all of the air crew off the aircraft. Team sergeant signs for the plane. They can't even be on the plane, even though it's a secret plane. They can't be on the plane when we crack this device, because we're going to crack it. Pull it out, do a 100% inspection by the book, place it in jump configuration, and that's what we're going to do. So that's what we did. Fly to Germany, jump in, execute 3-day movement, set the target, and I think we had like a company of American infantry aggression against us, and do the job. The interesting thing about this was, though, is we had the two NRC guys, and we had our tactical evaluator, who was a captain engineer, and we're sitting there. Of course, the helicopter wouldn't fly, because helicopters never fly to pick you up. It's always a deuce and a half. It's like cold as shit, you know. So we're sitting here on this crossroads, and I only carry enough food. I don't eat the first day and the last day, so I'm starving to death. And all of a sudden, here comes the Army, boom, boom, rolling up there, surround us. I'm sitting there, and the evaluator gets up, and lieutenant goes up. This lieutenant gets out. He's up. I'm going to take all you prisoners. You're obviously who we're looking for, and blah, 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 blah. Evaluator goes, no, game's over. You're not taking anybody prisoner. Well, we're going to confiscate everything here. He goes, you're not going to confiscate shit. And that's when he drawed that 45. He said, in fact, you're going to get your goddamn ass back in that truck and get the hell out of here. Well, I'll will ventilate your ass right here. Like, we all locked and loaded. It's like, okay, here we go. Game on. This lieutenant looked around and goes, I think these are not the men I was looking for. Bye. Anyway, get back. The NRC guys took the device back and to check it and to do everything. Because what we do, we'd normally set the timers on it, and you set the timers, do your backside, stand off, and then you would listen on the radio for your ops codes every 20 minutes, and they would send out ops codes, and there was a 4-letter code group I was looking for who would tell me what I was going to do, because at some point in time I needed to shut down and get the hell away as fast as I could. Like, I get an hour, and so usually it'd be like a 4-man team that would stay within 500 meters of it. But usually what they would do is they would wait till that 1 hour right before that, and they'd pop you and say, recover it. You're pulled off. So then you go down there and you dearm it, but you dearm it by the book. Dearm it, put it back in its little bag, scurry away. And that's the way it worked. So it was a lot of fun.
What was it when you say dearm it? What was it?
The device, the bomb.
Okay. So
yeah, you had
putting 2 and 2 together. This was no small bomb.
No, it weighed about 65 pounds. It was a dirty bomb. It was an implosion device, U-235, and you had specific things that had to be done on it. Wasn't simple,
right?
People also made it harder than they needed to. It was probably the actual dealing with it. If it wasn't for all the rules, because the rules were incredible.
I'm sure.
I mean, they were. I'll give you an example. When you wired in the timers, you had to use between 11 and 13 turns of 20 gauge copper wire between the arming lever and the holder. That was about 1.25 inches, and you had to have exactly between that number of turns. And it doesn't matter that it's 10 below zero out there. It doesn't matter that it's raining. It has to be perfect. And that's why guys like me, when you're young, you're Mr. Tech savvy, well, I wouldn't say I was tech savvy. I would say that I was more tech savvy than a lot of the guys, because a lot of the people that were on those teams, their goal was to get off those teams because we planned for real missions. Mm-hmm. We planned real missions. We had real missions that we were going to do if the balloon went up.
This is the infamous green light teams, is what you're describing.
Right. You had a real mission. You would go in on D-2. We were going to use a seaplane, and we had no exfil.
Repeat. No exfil?
We had no exfil. We would go straight into ER&R, roll over to UW.
Wow. So how long did you stay on one of these teams?
Oh, a little over 2 years.
Long enough.
I enjoyed it. I mean, but I got a lot of good schools out of it. I got NWTC instructor school, ski school, climbing school, Halo school, all those great things. I mean, you wouldn't have got those anywhere else.
Starting a career this way is kind of hard to imagine. Like, this is very early on. You've still got 3 decades ahead of you. Let's get into middle career, and because frankly, sir, a career that spans 40 years is a very unique thing. So to cram this into one podcast episode would be impossible. But I'd like to start hitting the high points in mid-career.
So what I did is I ETS'd out of the active duty. I remember the night I left, the company sergeant major caught me and he said, "Hey, do not leave until I've had a chance to talk to you." And he was an asshole. So my roommate was looking out the window and said, "Hey, man, I'm getting in my car. I'm leaving. If I ain't getting shit up there, you can have it. I'm gone." He says, "Don't you got to sign out?" I go, "I ain't signing shit. I'm leaving. My contract's up. I don't know what you think you're doing." Anyway, so I get out and I immediately start to college. I mean, immediately. Like 2 weeks later, I started college. I had no experience at college. My SATs were terrible. Like every SF guy ever was. He goes out and gets drunk the night before because it's an easy test. Comes back and you're like mid-range retarded. Anyway, I go to college and I stayed in the reserves. At that time, there was a reserve company in Kansas City. So it gave me the ability to stay in the reserves and make that money, which was good. So I went to college, and all through all this, I've been dating my wife for about 8 years now. I was dating her when I was a senior in high school, and I was still dating her, and she was going to college then too. So she was a freshman as well. She's a little bit younger than me. Anyhow, so I was dating her, being in the reserves, which I hated. Because I got to tell you, at that point in time, and I don't want to knock the guys in the reserve and the guard of the 80s and all that. I don't want to. But there's a reason why. There's a reason why the active duty had issues with us, because. And it's still in the guard today. It's that guard mentality, There's not that dedication to excellence. You today you deal with excellence. These guys, these SF guys today, they are spot on. Their certifications are just like active duty. Their criteria is just like active duty. They go to the same school as the active duty. I mean, and they deploy just like the active duty. But at that time, we mainly did war games.
Okay.
And while I had been involved with a few war games, it wasn't the same.
This is pre-GY.
Yeah. All through that. And, but I stayed in the reserves, got out of college, got married, decided to go to law school, went to law school, graduated about 1989. There was a period of time in there. I had to get out of being a radio operator, so I went to O&I, got my intel training. Didn't get the MOS for another 2 years, because if you were a medic or a radio operator, they could. Reserves only had so many radio operators and medics. But I went to law school, got out of law school, thought I was all smart, important. I
Thank
was
you
the
for
managing
tuning
editor
in to the
of
Soldier Fund podcast.
of the Missouri
If you're
Journal of
inspired
Street
by the
Resolution.
stories of these
I
elite
got
citizen
published.
warriors and want to support their mission,
I mean, I was fairly
visit us
successful.
at thesoldierfund.org.
Threw all that away.
Your contributions help us
So
to
I come back
continue to
home and
back the
practice law.
Special Forces
Now, if you
soldiers of the
get all these
National Guard
qualifications,
as they fight
but if you
around
don't
the
go
world.
clerk for some big judge,
Until next time,
you're going to some big
stay
law
committed
firm.
to stand
The
with
day
those
it's
who
kind of
serve.
like buying a new car. That we drive that car off the lot, man, that thing just depreciated 20% right there. Just like that was me. But I practiced law, moved back home, bought a farm, and it was pretty good. I kind of liked practicing law. There was some fun things to it. I mean, I enjoyed it. And I was really close to getting out of the Guard about 1995, I think. But I will say this, I didn't, because at that time, the National Guard was more like a therapy for me. It kept me in shape. It kept me focused. It gave me something to do. And at that time, after Somalia, things started getting serious in the Guard. After Desert Storm, after Somalia, things started getting real. We were training for real. We were doing real JSETs. I did a 6-week JSET in Kuwait in 1994. I did a 5-week JSET in Jordan the year before. And coming to Mississippi, I did JSETs in El Salvador, Honduras, Peru, Ecuador, Bolivia. So these were real missions. We were training troops, and we would be doing, and by and large, while the traditional guardsman in Mississippi is doing 2 weeks in the summer and 1 week in the month, we're doing about 4 weeks sometime, because JSETs just don't happen in the summer. And you're doing that, and then your medics are doing their certifications every year, same as engineers, everybody else. So you're putting in, at that time, guys are putting in at least 6 weeks full time every year to meet their training. And at that time, you could see the progression of skill going up. It become more and more significant, if you will. So the standards were getting higher. And by the way, I talked to you about this before. They also stopped the program back in the 80s of the paper tab. We talked about that, didn't we?
We did.
Yeah. Did you ask anybody else about it, Ben?
Not yet, but our audience hasn't heard that part of the conversation. I'd love for them to.
Well, so when I talked about that 1980s SF, and I'm not dinging anybody. I've got friends that were paper tabs who are great guys, all that. But when you don't hold the standards the same, you're not always going to get the right guy. So in this case, paper tab, you would go to Fort Bragg for 2 weeks. That would be your phase 1, not 6 weeks, 2 weeks. And then the next year, your summer camp, you would go for 2 weeks. Of course, you'd have to do correspondence courses throughout the year. And then the next summer, you would go for your 2 weeks, right? And get your MOS. And then you could go to a 2-week Robin Sage the next year, or you could do 2 field missions with your own ODA, and then they would award you your flash, pre-tab days, or your tab, whatever it was. And that was called a paper flash. It wasn't 8 months. It's more like 6 weeks.
Right.
And people are like, you must be kidding me. I'm like, no, I'm not kidding you. I actually didn't know that till I was in the reserves for quite a while. I'm like, what do you mean a paper tab? I was like, oh, yeah, this guy's paper tab. I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
What's paper tab?
Well, actually, this has a close connection with Frank's episode, or my conversation with Frank. He was very particular, very big on standards being the same. And not to jump too far ahead, but the reduction of standards causing a dilution of the force. And this is a big problem for guys that have been around for a long time. When you start adjusting the standards, then the throughput, the output is not the same. The Green Beret at the end of that different standard is not the same.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. I couldn't agree more. I will say, though, to compare and contrast from my active duty days years ago to what we're doing today, like I said before, they do a lot better job of training them. I think that and they used to be, it's kind of like, hey, we're going to get you through this. You're going to be competent, but it's going to be up to your ODA to train you. What that meant, though, was, so while I was on active duty, at least of the X-rays that came to my team, I was the only one who made it. They kicked the other ones off the team because they were just either goofy or stupid.
It does explain a lot. The way that you're talking about it now actually explains a lot. You're filling in some gaps for me, that there is a pretty high level of competition among teams. Like, who's the top team in this company? Who's shit hot here? I mean, that's still a huge part of the culture, in that there's a lot of pride at the team level at the way that they can achieve their capabilities. It seems like that may be a little bit of a root of that the training was happening at the ODA level. I think that survived inside the culture well past when it began.
I completely agree with you. And I think this all culminates, in my mind at least, with the global war on terrorism. At that time, I was a team sergeant in Charlie Company up in Grenada. I had a full ODA, very competent guys. I mean, very competent. And we were extremely competitive. Extremely competitive. We were activated in just before 2002. Went out to Colorado, and I mean, every day. This is how you can tell a really good ODA. A really good ODA, we're going to go out here and run, right? But it's never a run, and it's never in formation, and everybody wants to win. It's always a race. Everything's a damn race.
That's right.
You can't do anything. If I'm taking my gun apart, it's a goddamn race, you know? If I'm eating chow, it's a damn race. It's always a race. We're always racing. We're race horses. We're type A personalities. We want to get it on, And that is true. That's the Frank Rossi's. That's all those ODAs, And I think teams in companies, they know who the guys are that are really good. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they also, they know from their qualifications, but the politics of knowing where to put yourself and knowing when to take on the man and fight the good fight and when to shut your mouth. That runs all the way back to when I was in E3 on an ODA. I knew when to shut my mouth, And I think when my team sergeant Joe said to me, he said, "Hey, Seed, shut your fucking mouth. Don't say a word." Okay? He meant it. If I got out of line, one of these sevens would smack me. Not so much anymore, but you had to learn those hard lessons, and it was just tough. But when GWAT kicked off, I saw some things in my career I thought I would never see. Because, okay, right, we all train to what? We train towards lethality. We train towards the capability to fight, to be force multiplier, to get in with the indigenous people, make them our friend, bond with them somewhat, and that's our jobs. And that's what makes special forces special. Okay? I'm not very philosophical about things. I'm more like, man with hammer hits rock, But that's what it comes down to. Mm-hmm. But as time went on, we deployed over there as a company. Well, I actually didn't deploy with Charlie Company. I deployed with Alpha Company on that mission. And that was 2003. And I will say by August of that year, a quarter of that company was gone.
Wow.
They had been pulled.
Wow.
Because I always used to use this word, they saw the devil and realized they didn't want no part of it. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
I mean, They didn't want to. There's two guys that react to this stuff, man. I saw them both at the same time. I had a guy on another ODA who was just like, he's like, I catch him sitting on a truck bed down in Gardez one day, and I'm like, hey, man, what's going on? He's an E7 on one of the other teams. He goes, not much. I said, what are you wearing? He goes, oh, this is my 3 colors. And they're like completely tan. Tan. I go, when was the last time you washed that uniform? He goes, I don't think I've ever washed it. I said, have you ever had a bath? He goes, oh, I had one some while back. I go, well, you really need to clean up, you know? This guy's like, he hung with it, though. He just didn't give a damn anymore.
Right.
I had another guy that every time he pull up the KG pass, he start shooting the 50 cal. I go, what are you doing? He says, I'm just letting them know I'm coming. I'm like, dude, I don't like that attitude. I'd rather they not know I'm coming. You know? We're down here in Gardez. This is not a nice area. I mean, we're in a meeting. I had team sergeant tell me, he says, well, gentlemen, me, another team, a couple third group teams, and this team sergeant from my company was like, I think we should all hold hands and pray. I'm like, look, I'm good about being religious, but I don't like the idea. I mean, I guess you pray before a football game or something. I don't know, but it's kind of like saying, well, Lord, I'm coming to meet you. Like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm trying to be positive about this. I don't like people that scare me, and that scares me. That same mission, me and Sean's team leader, he's the first car, him and Gary Brown, first car, every damn night, they'd be driving along the road. Next thing you know, they're heading out somewhere in the hell. I don't know where they're going. I'm in the back of the patrol. They just take off going the other direction. I guess, where are you guys going? Well, we lost the road. I'm like, the road's not hard to find. Jesus Christ, man. Later on, found out Gary says, well, you know, I wear contacts and I didn't have men. Well, okay, well, you kept doing that shit because I'm getting tired of getting lost every damn night. You know? So we started using these Bearcat scanners. Now, this is a good one here. We're using these Bearcat scanners because all the dudes down there, the Taliban, have these push-to-talk radios. That's how they communicate. So I got my interpreter back there, and he's got his Bearcat scanner. And I don't know, he may not have been in my truck. I don't think he was. I think he was up with Sean. Anyway, Sean calls me back and says, hey, we're getting some chatter up here. They're setting up an ambush up here on Route Bronco. Pretty sure it's Route Bronco. I said, okay. He said, yeah, they're calling for people to come out with whatever they got, RPGs, RPKs, AKs, whatever they got, come out. And they're saying tonight we're going to see who lives and who dies. I'm like, oh, shit. That's what I wanted to hear. Mm-hmm. Damn it. I mean, I think maybe it might be time to get off the road. Oh, well, no, we'll just party right on up there. Luckily for us, of course, we had the Gary Brown maneuver, which is to immediately make a right-hand turn and go the other direction. So that was still almost impossible to ambush us because we didn't even know where we were going.
When you say Sean, which Sean?
Sean Satterfield.
Oh, okay.
Sean Satterfield was my team leader.
Yes, okay. I thought that's who you meant.
Anyway, so he thinks he's got it narrowed down to this colot up here. Or about 400 yards off of it. And anyway, I'm looking and I can't see shit. I don't see anything over there. And we're kind of creeping up on it. I said, Sean, are you sure that's the right colot? He goes, yeah, that's the right colot. And then, of course, we all have headphones on and Peltors and radios. And about that time, his gunner buzz comes on. Yeah, he says, there, it's right there. And he turns this 2 million candle power spotlight on it. I go, well, thank you very much for announcing your position. I'll be making a right-hand turn here. God damn. Anything to scare me.
Right.
And then the next night we're out, and Buzz, that's their gunner, he says, I see something down the back creek. There's a man down there. He's got a light. We got to go down there and sneak up on him. Well, of course, he couldn't go because he was on the gun. So me and JJ and a couple other guys, we sneak down there and sneak down. Buzz goes, be careful now. He may be armed. I'm like, oh, my God, shut up, Buzz. Get down there, go white light. I got my Terp with me too. Go white light on this dude like 8 feet away. He didn't hear us. It was pretty cool. And he wets his pants, and he's working on his dike. He's watering his crops.
Oh, boy.
He's watering his crops. My Terp goes, I could have told you he was watering his crops. I'm like, well, why didn't you tell me that? So then he goes, and then the guy jabbers something to the Terp, and Terp goes, he says there might be some bad guys over there. So immediately, was it Gary or Jay? They head off that way. I said, whoa. No.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have Mr. Nightlight walk in front. I ain't walking in front. He's walking in front. And again, it just another false positive. It was a comedy of errors,
Mm-hmm. When you speak about it, though, you speak very fondly. Like you were alive. You were fully alive during these years of doing this stuff with these guys.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And the adrenaline was always just awesome. It was just like kicking, I will relate some things to that, though. After I came back from that tour, I know there was one time I never took my body armor off for 3 days. And I don't know why, but I'm pretty sure I didn't. But I know when I came back, I weighed probably 235, 40 pounds at the time. I lost 40 pounds in like 9 months.
Whoa.
And I don't know why. I think it's because of the long distance. I mean, we did a lot of travel and a lot of driving on those roads, hit IEDs, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
All those things, all that excitement, raises those cortisol levels, and they're hard to get back where they should be. And it's just really interesting, But
the service does have an impact.
Oh, absolutely, it does, and people don't realize that. They really don't. And in the case of that tour in Afghanistan, it was like, I remember we were what was called Moses in the desert, right? In other words, we would go out, and our job is to get shot at so that we could bring out the Taliban and then smoke them. That's what we did. Every day, every night, until about August, when they decided we could work with the ANA. Now, I saw this as a good deal because you had 100 of these dudes, and some of them were pretty damn good. They're pretty dedicated.
I've heard this.
This is not a bad deal.
Mm-hmm.
And I told Sean, I said, we got to stay employed with these dudes. So we're going to run them. We're going to run traffic stops. We're going to do this. We're going to do that because they are super good. 10 days into it, we get a message. Hey, can you bring your ANA to Kandahar and take them to Spin Bullock? I'm like, what? It's August. We've been here, 5 months? We're going home in a month. Why am I going to go to Spin Bullock? Well, I don't care. How many C-130s do you need? I said, I don't want any C-130s, and I want to go to Kandahar, and I want to go to Spin Bullock. And I said, 5. All right, 5. I'll take 5. So Sean launches with one of the engineers, and they go to Kandahar to set up places for the ANA to stay. And I con op with these other bozos back up to Kabul. Throw them on C-130s there at the airport, not at Bagram, at Kabul. I won't even go why I didn't go to Bagram, but me and the CSM at that time up there, we were persona non grata. I mean, he tore my ass out of the frame more than once.
Okay.
I don't know if you knew that.
I didn't.
Yeah, pretty bad. Yeah, well, I'm still looking for that son of a bitch, too. Anyhow. Anyway, flew him down there. Gun trucks come in. ANA gets off. First thing they do, ANA gets all over the trucks. We take them down to their circus tent. Some major stops us on the road there. He goes, we got like 35 people riding on this Humvee. I'm like, yeah. He says, well, they're Afghans. I go, well, it's Afghanistan. He goes, well, you shouldn't have 35 of them riding on there. There's not 35 seatbelts. I'm like, well, why don't you tell them that? Because I ain't got no savvy here. So I'm just going to go on. These guys were a wreck at Kandahar. We only did, I don't know. We may have not done any. No, we didn't do the mission, but we did a mission planning. I think Sean had the flu or something. He was sick, and I went down to set with the 10th Mountain and talk about this mission and all that. And they're talking about the cordon, and they're going to put the A&A in here and all that. And okay, I said, yeah. They talked about the rules of engagement. I said, they go, what rules of engagement do your A&A use? I go, they use the Afghan rules of engagement. I go, what's that? They said, they shoot Taliban. Well, how do they know if they're Taliban? I go, they just know they're Afghans. Trust me. Stay out of town. They'll take care of it. Don't worry about it.
Wow.
And they did.
And they did.
And they did. So I had to go to the ATOC to get the manifest for the helicopters. They had like 6 helicopters. Go down there, talking to this chick E5. She's like, well, I need a manifest. I go, I had the manifest from the C-130s. Ha, I got this. Throw it down there. She looks at it and she goes, I can't read this. I go, I can't either. But you wanted a manifest. There's a manifest. And then she goes, well, where's your Social Security numbers at? I said, well, guess what? They're Afghans. They don't recognize the Social Security system. They don't pay into it. Good Lord, girl. Go get a life, would you? We flew down there, right? We had to put these trucks on these C-130s at Bagram, which we began to call Fort Bragg East. Well, they looked at our trucks. The trucks were dirty. Hell, there was loose rounds all over the place, hand grenades rolling around on the floor. You can't have that. Why not? We're at war. This is what happens. Shit falls out and on the floor, and we just leave it there because we don't give a damn. No, you have to have all them taped up and foam around them in a box, okay? And you got to pick up all these rounds. You can't have loose rounds on the floor. Why is there loose rounds anyway? I said, because the damn gun jams. Or we just jack around out, jack around in, and don't really care about it. We just don't think about it. It was a nightmare. You know, that whole trip. And then we went out to Kalat and put in a new governor, and it was just psychotic, the shit that went on. It was just crazy, you know?
But you were there for it.
And then finally, yeah, and the worst part was, so we were doing one last mission. Of course, I didn't know it was the last mission, but it became the last mission. We're going to roll out, and I tell you what, my guys were at the end of their whatever, right? And I had to get in their face and say, look, you will load your shit in this truck, and you will get in that truck, and you will go down this road. And that's the way it's going to be. And so that's what they did. The interesting thing about that really pissed me off is the AOB that sent us that we were working for at the time, which, of course, we never met because we were Moses in the desert. I call up and I go, Sean calls up. He goes, this is Mustang 6-3, checkpoint 1. And they go, Mustang who? Mustang 6-3, checkpoint 1. What are you doing? Well, we're on a con op. Well, where are you from? I said, we're based out of that castle in Kalat, dude. He says, man, what's going on here? Well, the AOB that sent us had left and been replaced. And didn't bother telling that we were going out. I said, Sean, that's it. I'm not driving through that pass tonight. I just had a flat tire. I'm stopping here. I'm sleeping. I'm frustrated. And that's bullshit. People get and I learned this. People get frustrated. People get tired. They start cutting corners, and it gets dangerous.
There it is. There it is.
It gets dangerous. You got to be on your game. So anyway, we came home. We got to back up to me and the team. Me and Sean, the last guys out. We stayed at the ATOC there at Bagram. We didn't go to the main camp because, like I said, I wasn't well received there, and slept on the concrete floor. But it was still fun. Sent the rest of the team up to get squared away, and we took back the last pallet the next day and went back. We had to set in K2 for 2 weeks. I asked the XO. I said, "Is it possible to get MWR pass and take the guys up to Samarkand?" They go, "Oh no, we ruined that months ago. You're stuck here." Like, Jesus Christ, really? this is bullshit. And then you'd walk around there, and some E9 catches me and goes, "Where's your boonie hat?" I go, "I don't own a boonie hat." He says, "You're supposed to have on a boonie hat, and you're supposed to have the string tied underneath your neck." I go, "Well, I ain't thinking that's ever going to fucking happen." And you may see some other guys just the same.
And I'm sure they
really don't give a shit about your rules. So we did get one trip to SummerCon, and naturally, what does all SF guys do? Well, we had chow, it was good, and then we went to a bazaar, which had Russian vodka, and guys got it. We get on the bus to go back, and they're intoxicated to some large extent. And they had two MPs guard us. We didn't have any guns. MPs had little pistols with them. These MPs says, "Hey, Sarge, do you think you can get control of these people?" I go, "They're drunk. No, I can't get control of them." "Well, why can't you?" I said, "Because I frankly don't care." I said, I said, "Do you know where we've been the last 8 months?" They go, "No." "What do you think? We working on cars somewhere down in Bagram, or handed out basketballs?" Jesus Christ. Damn Air Force fools. Whatever. Finally get home. Great trip. Then, months later, I become sergeant major, run the training company for a few years, do another deployment over to Afghanistan as a S3 type. My team time's over. I was a team sergeant from 1994 to 2024. I had 10 years as a team sergeant. Maybe a little more. I don't know. Yeah, it might have been a little more. But 10 years, and then become a sergeant major. And I was a sergeant major, I guess, for what? 15 years. 15 years. Multiple deployments. Afghanistan, of course, Central America. Sean and I ran CENTAM operations down there for OESCCA. AFRICOM, SOCAF, all great deployments, man. All great deployments. I did see that my last one with SOCAF was really kind of eye-opening, because the military was starting to go through some really serious changes that made me question, in my span of service, what the goal was. I remember in 2003, do you remember when that doctor down at, was it Fort Hood, shot those South Carolina guardsmen? Came in and shot them. I met that unit coming out of Afghanistan. They were going in, and just conventional guys. They were pretty tore up about it. I remember at that time, I think it was Chief of Staff Dempsey, said he certainly hoped that this didn't hurt diversity in the military. Where's the concern about the dead soldiers? What, diversity is ahead of human life? I guess it is if you talk about the principles of lethality. And what is lethality? Competence, core competence, capabilities. When you put diversity ahead of that. Because equality is not equal. It's just inclusive. No, those are political opinions I have, which I'm free to have.
you certainly
I've had
are.
them my whole life.
Right, yeah. Well, unfortunately, we're running short on time for this episode. What I'd love to do is to be able to come back and grab more of just the philosophy. The stories have been incredible, and I hate that we're having to cut it short. But I've got this pressing question I'd like to just wrap this portion of the episode with, if you don't mind. In speaking with you leading up to this interview, I can tell that you are passionate about special forces. You're passionate about National Guard Special Forces. It means a lot to you. And I would love to, if you could, to put that into words in an effort to help the civilians that are tuning into this podcast understand just how special and elite this community of people is.
I just have one last thing I want to say on here, Ben, before, and I don't want to forget to mention it. While I appreciate every man and woman in our units and the work they do, people need to not forget the most important factor for that soldier's mental health, these guys that are still deploying every time, every day, everywhere, how important their families are and what their families go through. And that's probably one of the most important things to me, given my career. And I'll just end with that and say, I don't think I would be where I'm at today if it wasn't for my wife. I wouldn't be. It means that much. It's hard to put in the work when you're gone month after month after month, but you have to do it.
Right.
And I had to encourage my soldiers to do it. I had to tell soldiers, you need to call your wife. Oh, I don't want to call her. No. You've still got a relationship. You got to call her. Here's a sat phone. Go call her.